Hello everybody and welcome to my second GAC season review. This one is my first 5v5 season review and I'm excited to look over my defensive results with everybody. I'm a little late for doing it because I've been gone for the past few days, or like 4 or 5 days at a board game convention. It was a fun time, but the past few videos I had recorded ahead of time. But now I did want to get back to reviewing my 5v5 season before 3v3 starts. And my season record was 4-5, so not the best. It was a losing season, just under a losing season, and I won my last match, so pulled it out to avoid a 3-6. And it was very hard for me. It was just a lot of difficult opponents, and from my score average, I averaged 1608, and I gave up an average of 1763. So I was really getting, when I got beat bad because I wasn't clearing fully. And there was only one opponent, I think, that didn't full clear me, so it was a lot harder to get holds in 5v5. A lot of this room to get clever with my roster and be able to keep enough to get through. A lot of times I was going offense heavy and still couldn't clear, so it was pretty tough. But I'm going to go through now my most common set defenses and how they did. First team I placed almost every match. There was a couple times I took on offense. It's my General Skywalker team. And I didn't always have the same data card on it, but most of the time I did have a high defense. So this one, it had good protection to play into his strengths, high defense, a little bit of crit damage to help get some offense out there. And this time I added the actual banners I had each time he got cleared, instead of just the average banners, but I have that too. I'm also using Galactic Legends drawn as a measure of success and holds as well. And if there isn't one single counter that gets used all the time, I consider that a little bit of a strength as well. So if I have a really common counter, that's bad. But in this case, only a double counter. Everything else was pretty diverse. 2 times people use Star Killer, and I consider that better. If it was every single time people are using the same thing, then it's predictable, and I shouldn't be setting it. But I got a couple holds in a 32. I think it was one match where I got both the holds, so that's pretty concentrated. But otherwise, people got pretty high banners. They were using Galactic Legends. There were some Grand Inquisitors out there, and then also Star Killer, which are pretty simple counters, but they're pretty good as well. I'm not happy with seeing a Grand Inquisitor counter, but with the Super Datacron, it is better than it normally is. So I'd rate this like a B. B+. Drawing some Galactic Legends, but not a ton, and the banners are pretty high. I got some drops, but that's mainly just from one match, so it's not as good as I'd hoped. I think it did better in 3v3, but that's just because I was drawing a lot of Sith Eternals. Next, I got my Maul team, and this was pretty disappointing to me how it did across the whole season. I wasn't sure what banners I was getting. For a while, I wasn't checking all the time, but it looked like I had been stealing some banners with it. I had the 20% turn meter gain, and Bo-Katan was going first, or getting the 60% turn meter. And then Canderous, Jango, Bo were resetting their cooldowns and getting turn meter when they got a chance, and I used a really defense-heavy Datacron on them. But people were able to roll over it pretty easily with Imperial Troopers, and not just this team. There was Iden Troopers a few times as well. Didn't draw any Galactic Legends, didn't get any holds, and average banners of 61.63. It did get a bunch of banners taken away a couple times, 55 on 2 occasions, so that is pretty good. But, not what I was hoping for out of it. Now for 3v3, I do have the Canderous level 9, and I have him at R7, so that's going to work, so it might be a little bit different. But overall, this is kind of a failure on defense. The only thing I could say it is doing well is drawing Imperial Troopers in the front, so they're not available for the back, and probably could have gotten away with Lord Vader back there a little bit more, and then he would have drawn a better team. Next, and this isn't a surprise, Darth Malgus did pretty well just because he's a huge Galactic Legends draw. Drew Sith Eternal and Watt 4 times, but other times he took other stuff like I saw Jabba, JMK, a couple of Springleader Kylos. And I didn't have the tank revive the whole time. I did have the turn meter gain for a good while, but I switched to this. But each time I kept a lot of defense on the team. Defense doesn't really matter too much against Sith Eternal, but against other teams it really did. I got 4 holds and 8 Galactic Legends drawn. And the 4 holds were just in one match. That was actually against Gom of Operation Metaverse. You could even watch that on Twitch replays, unless it's gone. I don't know how that works. But he was pretty dried up at that point. He had to do a bunch of stuff. He had to use burners, and he took out Malgus once, and had to take out the rest of the team. And it took a while, but that's where most of the banner drops came from. There was a 52. 60, but a bunch of 65. So I averaged out at 59.3 banners. It's not like the lowest, but the fact that it's drawing a bunch of Galactic Legends makes me think that this was a very successful defensive team, and I'm going to keep doing it. Now, this team, in my opinion, is the real defensive hero. Darth Traya with her Omicron, Savage with his Omicron, Talon as the 5th. No Omicron, but that would probably help out a lot. I usually just used like a 15% turn meter level 3. The level 6 wasn't doing anything. And adds as much health as I had available, 30%. Some potency, crit damage, mainly to get some damage out there. 7 Galactic Legends drawn, 1 hold. I did set it every single time, so there was just a couple times where I didn't draw a Galactic Legend. I think people used gas and got through one time. But it was a lot of different Galactic Legends. The most common one was Supreme Leader Kylo Ren twice, and you see here this was not super clean. They dropped some. I mean, it's not the best team that was used here. It wasn't the A team for First Order, but pretty good average banners, 57.33 with only 1 hold. That's dropping like almost 8 banners. I got a 58.45. A 65 and a 64. I think the 65 was a Rey. And that's what I figured out, that I wanted to use Rey against her in the last match. That's what I did. But this is super successful, mainly because of Galactic Legends drawn. And even though people were using Galactic Legends, they were still dropping plenty of banners. Not tons of holds, because I think people did recognize that they did need to burn a lot of stuff against it. But very good defensive team. Very happy with it, and I'm going to keep doing it. Jabba. Jabba was kind of a mixed bag. On paper, he's a very good defensive team. He's a timeout risk. I don't have the best one. I have R6s, and that's just how I'm going to keep him for a little bit while I'm trying to get Afra, because I'd rather have 1 Afra and a little bit of a reduced Jabba than 0 Afra and an awesome Jabba. And people did use Afra to clear it 4 times. That's the most often, but it wasn't every single time, and most of my opponents did have Afra. I think if they did have her, they did use her. I think a couple times maybe they had her and didn't use her, maybe because it was on defense or something else. I did decent Datacron, not the best one. You wanted the other level 9 with the extra ultimate charge, but I did have Retribution, which was annoying for people, and the level 3 wasn't the best either. But it does make Jabba faster in the end. Drew 3 Galactic Legends, so it wasn't a total waste there. The average banners were pretty low, relatively. That's because the people that had to use Supreme Leader Kylo had a really bad banner battle, and I know how that is from my experiences. Even with the Supreme Leader Kylo Datacron, it's a very hard match, even though it does work. I only got 1 hold, but at least I did get a hold. It wasn't like just walked over it all the time. Not super happy with Jabba. Next 5v5, I'll probably take him on offense unless something changes. Now Rey. I was a little surprised on Rey because I thought people were going to use Starkiller more, especially since I just set a resistance lineup. But the most common was JML by far. It was 5 times people used JML, and it was usually like a 60 or 62. I think that's what those were. And Starkiller had a higher ceiling. It usually, when that did work, it usually ended with higher banners. But I didn't get any holds the whole season. And I set it 8 times, only kept it on offense the 1 time in the last match. I did win that match, so I kind of wish I took her on offense more often. I switched to Tenacity after like round 1, so I think for 6 battles I had Tenacity on them, and I think that is probably part of the reason people didn't use Starkiller and use more JML. Also some good armor there, which helps reduce Starkiller's impact. Level 3 and level 6 doesn't matter. But yeah, it was a little disappointing. 60.87 banners. It is drawing a Galactic Legend, but JML, I don't know where people are going to use him otherwise. So I'm not totally satisfied with her. Next 5v5, well, they have a resistance Datacron set 6, so I'm going to see a set 7. So I'm going to see how that works. Otherwise, I wouldn't be impressed enough to keep her on defense for next 5v5. Qui-Gon Jinn, and this team was a complete dud. Averaging almost a perfect 65 banners, only took away 5 banners the whole season. Quite bad. I was only getting the stats from it. I usually went for a little bit more crit damage, but it was a walk in the park for Bad Batch. Didn't draw any Galactic Legends, no holds. 9 up, 9 down. And the only reason I said it is because I didn't have an idea of what to use it for on offense. I probably could have changed around the lineup for defense. In 3v3, I think it's probably still a defensive team, and it does better. It did better for me last season. But for next season, if I want to set this, I'm probably going to look into switching up the comp. It's hard because my Jedi want to go everywhere, and there's a lot of different uses I want for them. So, I don't really want to give up General Kenobi or Ahsoka Tano, but maybe I will. Who knows? I'll have to look at this next time. This is a complete disappointment on defense. Bounty Hunters. This is what I set on defense a few times because a lot of times on offense I ended up not using them and I felt like they were wasted, but they were such a good team. I set them with the Terminator gain, and Mando got that, so he was probably calling someone to assist and hopefully getting some Terminator, and I had the cooldown reset. Stats were kind of middling, and it was just kind of spread out. I didn't get any holds, and it pretty much drew CLS most of the time. It also drew, I think, Aura Sing a lot of times. So Bounty Hunter versus Bounty Hunter. Not too great on the banner front, just not very good. It did draw CLS, so if I want to put something in the back that normally get countered by CLS, that, I don't know, that might be something that I could do with strategy-wise. But overall, very disappointing. I don't think I'll be going back to this on defense, and I'm just going to have to figure out what to do with them on offense. Raddus. So, Raddus wasn't a total disappointment. I knew he wasn't going to really be a hold master, but he did get a couple holds. And they didn't clear when they got the holds, so that's why the banner is still high. But he did get some holds and prevented a clear, partially. So that was some measure of success. No Galactic Legends drawn. Most common counter was Aura Sing Bounty Hunters. At first I had a higher tenacity Datacron on them, but then I put that on Rey, and I got kind of a middle tenacity, middle potency on them here. It's not killer, but on offense, it does have some uses. But on defense, it's mainly just like, okay, they're gonna use their Bad Batch here, or they're gonna use their Bounty Hunters, so I'm gonna draw that out. But people didn't use Bad Batch as much earlier on, I think, because of the higher tenacity. But later on, when I gave Rey my higher tenacity Datacron, people started switching more to Bad Batch in the late rounds, and it might have been tied with this, but I think it might have just been a couple in that last round. But Raddus, yeah, it's kind of a team I'm going to keep on defense, even though it didn't get the best results, because I don't really have much for it on offense. Last team of the season I'm going over, because I set them every single time, 9 times, is Sortie. And I am pleasantly surprised with how Sortie did. Drew 3 Galactic Legends, which surprised me. I didn't expect that. Of course, it was on the top wall, so that might just be because people had leftover Galactic Legends and didn't want to mess with it. I had the Terminator gain that didn't really do much, but the bonus turn if George are defeating an enemy, so people didn't want to mess with that. You could use Wampa, but I usually said I had a higher defense Datacron on it. I did switch it later on. I got one hold, and that was Wampa, so I think people were more nervous about using Wampa against this team. But it took some banner, 61.33. I'm mainly happy that I drew some Galactic Legends, including Supreme Leader Kylo twice, which is successful, and I will take that. Again, maybe it's just because it was the top wall, but who knows. It did win me one match because it got the hold I needed, and without that hold, I wouldn't have won. So I'm very happy with Sortie. I think she'll be much better in set 7, just because there's some light side droid datacrons, focused more on what she does, so that's going to be great. I already rolled her level 7 datacrons, so I'll probably take her to R7 at some point. But yeah, no, I'm very happy with Sortie, even though she wasn't like a world beater. She did her job, I think. So that's it. That was my whole season in review as far as defense goes. Everyone, if you watched my GACs, you've seen what happened on offense. And it wasn't my best. You know, I don't want a losing record even in this fashion. My defense clearly wasn't doing it for me. Part of that is because I faced much tougher opponents this 5v5 season than I did in 3v3. With a 7-2 season in 3v3, I climbed way higher in the ranks than I had started. So I was facing still strong opponents, but weaker along the way. And then in 5v5, I started out up against really strong guys. And by the last bracket, everyone was huge. Even my last opponent in the loser bowl, where we both lost twice already, it was over 12.3 million. So just some crazy opponents this time, especially for my roster. You know, I'm happy I didn't get it wasn't worse, but I have some work to do, especially on the defensive front for next season. So I'll really be taking a look at that and keeping these results into consideration. Anyway, hope you learned something. I hope this might have been interesting to you. I appreciate you watching, and I will see you in the next one.